Okay, so have you ever had that moment where you were doing something new, something that you wanted, something that was big, right? Bigger than where you are right now. And you're fine when you were sitting there planning it, learning about it, even like executing basic tasks. But when it came to doing bigger things, like putting yourself out there or making the investment or reaching out to someone that you wanted to collaborate with or something that just was bigger, that would mean like you put your foot in the sand over here and you no longer were in the sandbox over here, right? Then you have that moment where either you freeze, like you just freeze, like you can't go forward, you can't go backwards, or maybe you run away, like you run back to what you were, never mind, was I thinking I'm just going to go back to this thing, or you are the person that all that energy kind of gets into your body and then you go do a bunch of stuff but avoiding that next step that you're going to take. So this is how your brain keeps you safe and familiar. Your brain is hardwired until you learn how to align your brain with what you want versus what's on autopilot in your subconscious. This is what your brain does to keep you safe and familiar. You see, there's this part of your brain, the subconscious part of your brain, that I call it the automation part of your brain. And it's built on reps. And guess when the majority of the repetition around you happened? It happened in childhood, young adulthood. Your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that can call BS on stuff and that can tell yourself to simmer down and can work through things, that doesn't fully develop until you're 25 years old. So there are patterns of the past, stories of the past about love, about enoughness, worth, ability, capacity, all those things, that there is a belief pattern in your subconscious running, and it runs 90%, 90% of your daily decisions, therefore your actions, therefore the results. And so there we find ourselves, right? As entrepreneurs, as driven people, as leaders, as people who want to make an impact in the world, right? And we find ourselves in this infinite loop. I desire this big outcome. I plan it, I map it, I create it, I feel good about it. And then I go to take the action of it, and unbeknownst to you, probably, your brain serves you this chemical cocktail of simmer down now. Like, simmer down now, like bring it back down to your potential is you're not going to amount to anything, or your capacity is I'm only meant to be a school teacher, right? Or whatever it is that you heard repeated over and over and over and over. So here's what I get you to, like, the most exciting thing to me is, number one, it's not your fault. You didn't create it. Number two is it's not your fault, and it's not your, like, you didn't make it happen. So these stories and this automation, this stuff that's in the subconscious that's running 90% of your decisions, actions, and results. The great news is that it can completely be flipped. I call it flipping your brain success switch on. You can literally teach your brain to make where you want to go safe and familiar, and where you've been as the threat, right? Now, that's a really powerful work. So when I talk about mindset, I talk about doing it from a brain-based perspective, because trying harder, willpower, pushing, it's a glucose. It has an expiration, usually about 24 to 48 hours, right? And so building anything of value, of worth, that will change your life, change your family's life, change the world, on that is a recipe for disaster. We got to go in there and flip your brain success switch on. And there's really two key components to this. It's making the thing that you're wanting to go get safe and familiar. We call that brain priming, creating a new automated success pathway. Then there's also the part where, because of the old patterns, it's like we have a foot on the gas and a foot on the brake at the same time. Like, we are gas pedal people. Like, nobody needs to motivate us. Nobody needs to get us going. We're driven. We're just wired naturally to be go-getters, right? You've probably been told that all your life. You've probably also been told you talk too much. You've also probably already also been told you don't follow rules very well, because that's the plight of us as entrepreneurs. But so putting your foot on the gas, it's just not a problem. It's not something, if it was other groups, maybe then we'd be having a different conversation. What the problem is your foot's on the gas, but your brain doesn't believe it. And so your brain throws you this cocktail of neurochemicals that gives you overwhelm, perfectionism, procrastination, really activates your fight or flight system. So when I said you freeze, that's where you naturally would do in your fight or flight system. If you went off and did a million other things, that's because you're a fighter. Naturally, in an argument, you're fighting, right? Your natural neurochemical lead is that fight. Well, what fighters do when their brain is in opposition to their vision is the fighters go and just start doing a whole bunch of other stuff to release that energy, right? Or those of us that flee, that run away during arguments or heated things, those are the ones that just walk away, right? And say, well, that was silly. And we start something smaller. That's not you. That's the chemicals your brain is serving you. So we need to build a different pathway that allows the place you want to go to be safe and familiar, but we also have to remove those brake pedal patterns in the subconscious, because it is like your foot being on the brake without your knowledge or permission, but your foot is on the brake. And what happens when you have the foot like accelerating the gas pedal and on the brake at the same time? You burn out, right? And isn't that the feeling that we get when we're trying to go for big things and we find ourselves continuing to move back or play like we go maybe a little further, but what's in our mind, our God-given calling, that desire is so much bigger. And so I hope through this podcast you can see that you don't need another strategy. You don't need another tactic. You don't need to go chase the how. When your brain is working against you, it'd be better served for you to truly flip your brain success switch on, so that you can build an automation to the thing you want, so that your brain isn't providing those neurochemical cocktails that are slowing you down, so that your brain is not on those brake pedal beliefs running 90% of your decisions and actions without your knowledge or permission. Like, it fires, you don't have a choice. And it's crazy, but that is the science behind achievement, is 90% of your daily decisions and actions come from that place. So if you knew, like, if I flip this on you, if I said 90% of people with this one strategy hit 7 figures in their business, or hit 7 figures in their investments, or hit 7 figures with their real estate, you would push people over to buy that system, that strategy, correct? Like 90% odds, heck yeah, give me that all day long. Well, this is that. Because when you tap in, when you train your brain to allow the place you want to go to become safe, when you remove those brake pedal beliefs, and it's very simple. Because we say, it's the brain science, we figure it's hard. It's actually one of the most simple processes, so step by step, that it's almost like it was intended for us to actually do these things, but we never learned them in school. We learned how to be good employees in school. We learned how to kill our intuition in school. We learned how to go and repeat what everybody says. That's why most of us didn't crush it in school, right? Because we don't love that. We color outside the lines. We see bigger visions. And unfortunately, the educational system has not changed since it was created to create good employees. So nowhere in that educational system did you learn how to operate the only thing that is creating your wealth, the only thing that is creating what you're doing with your time, how you're spending your money, how you're doing in your relationships, your health, all those areas. Your patterns in your brain are running 90% of your results, period. And to access and to learn the method, so step-by-step method, to flip that brain success switch on, then every strategy you have starts to work. Why? Because when you go to do it, the neurochemicals don't fight against you. Your brain doesn't work against you. It doesn't try to pull you back and make you feel smaller. It elevates you, it accelerates you, it unleashes you toward the place that you're going. But it's your choice, right? Like we were taught in the educational system that it's outside of us. And so most people will go look for that next strategy and never take a moment to think about, wait a minute, what's running these strategies? And what if what's running these strategies can be optimized in a way that it actually brings my results to me simply, effortlessly, not effortlessly, that's not true, but it aligns and starts to work for you. Your reticular activating system starts working for the thing you want, not the thing you don't. There's not that tug of war and that feeling of that the goal keeps moving forward, right? And so I want to encourage you today, if you've been going for big things and you haven't quite played as big as you know inside you have the capacity to do, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to knock on the door of the 90% that will change the game for your results, will change the game for your investments, for your real estate, for all the things you're doing, for your family, for your health, for your relationships. Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. You've heard that, right? The reason that idiom even stands is because how your brain allows you to do one thing is how your brain will allow you to do everything. And so when you get the blueprint on how to unlock and unleash the patterns to align with where you want to go versus where you've been, when you get the blueprint and the patterns to remove anything that you did not agree to put in your subconscious for good, so that it no longer puts a foot on the brake, and then you prime your brain to really see the future as safe, as familiar, and as the place where your identity already is, then everything opens up to you. So that's what I have for you this week on the Epic Success Podcast. It is truly the key to unleashing that next level result. And if you'd like some help with that, down in the show notes, just jump into 67-Day Year and we'll support you through that process. That's what I have for you this week on the Epic Success Podcast. I love you to pieces. I know you are called. I know you are meant to do great things in the world, and it's time to feel what it feels like to take the steps and let your brain flip that success switch on and get you there because you deserve it. All right, that's what I have this week on the Epic Success Podcast. For now.